dwelling
Sorry.
who is dwelling at the terebinths of Mamre the Amorite, kingsmen of Eshcol and Aner, these being Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he mustered his retainers, born into his household, numbering 318, and went in pursuit as far as dawn. At night, he and his servants deployed against them and defeated them, and he pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus.
Okay, so Abram intervenes in this war.
Sometime later, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. He said, "Fear not, Abram, I am a shield to you."
Okay, the chapter is much longer. I just took the gist of it. Yeah, Abram intervenes. He's able to free the five, to win over the five kings, and to free all of them. Okay, and then this is already the beginning of the next chapter. The Lord comes to Abraham and says, "Fear not, Abraham." And the question is, why should he be feared? Why should he fear? He's just one, by himself, five kings. Why is God trying to lower his anxiousness? What's the anxiousness? What do you think?
The only thing that comes to mind is that he might be anxious about punishment for killing people or for going to war.
Wow, you are exactly Rashi. Read Rashi. This is how Rashi explains it. Come on, go for it. Right after, sometime later. Rashi says, why is it saying sometimes later? Because it's connecting what happened before and this promise. Okay, keep reading.
After this miracle has been wrought for him, and that he slew the kings, and he was in great anxiety, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am thy fear not, Abram, I am thy shield." It was in great anxiety, saying, against punishment, for you shall not be punished on account of all these people whom you have slain.
So this is the first war we have, and Abraham is worried that maybe he slew people who were innocent. Right? Now think about it. When if somebody is attacking me personally, I of course have the right to protect myself and to attack him back. The problem with war is that it's not on a personal level. I mean, the guy who's now in front of me maybe hasn't even fired yet. And especially if I attack the camp of the ethics, right? Forget about civilians. Even the army itself, not everybody in the army wants to kill me or even has the job to kill me. So the minute we move from individual ethics to war ethics, we are in a situation that innocent people innocent in the sense that they haven't done anything wrong, could attack us, could be killed by us. So again, Genesis is sort of the mythology of Judaism. So everything that happens there first is something that we have to deal with. Okay, so that's Abraham. Now there's another story when Jacob is meeting with Esau. Remember the situation? He's coming back with his family, and Esau is coming towards him. So Kara, you want to read?
Sure. The messengers returned, that part?
Yeah.
The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau. He himself is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." Jacob was greatly
Now,
frightened.
you listen to the word. How many people?
400?
What does this remind you? What does it mean to have 400 people with him? I mean, these are smaller. Who had 400 people with him? Abraham in the last war. It's not a chance that the Bible is using the same number. Abraham with 400 people conquered 5 kings. And Jacob is coming with 12 children and a few slaves or whatever. So the chance of the danger is immense. Okay, so then the Bible says Jacob was greatly frightened and anxious. It uses 2 words, frightened and anxious. Now, if you look at it from a literal point of view, it's just 2 words to describe the same feeling, the same anxiety. But Rashi and Chazal, they always, if you have 2 words for the same thing, they'll say, what does one word add to the other word? So there are 2 words here, they explain it differently. What's the difference? What was he frightened of and what was he anxious? Can you read?
Sorry. He was afraid lest he be killed, and he was distressed that he might have to kill someone.
So we see again the same anxiousness about the problem of having to kill someone.
In the last, in the case of Abraham, wasn't he afraid of killing someone?
That's what we said. He was afraid that he killed.
In this case, like there's a distinction between like being anxious and being afraid, or is there not?
I don't understand.
Never mind.
It's basically the same dilemma, right? I have to protect myself, but on the way I might kill some people who are innocent. Now, the place which is the most similar to our situation is God's destruction of Sodom. You know the story, right? Because we talked about it a lot, I think. When God sends the angels to destroy Sodom, he tells it to Abraham. Why does he tell it to Abraham? Remember? Why does he confide in Abraham? He's going to destroy Sodom.
Oh, because Lot is there. Is that why? Or also so that he can argue with him? Both, maybe. Yeah.
Why does he want him to argue? I mean, you could have said, I mean, it sounds normal that you would have said because of Lot, but that's not what God says. He says what you're saying, but just a minute. Gabriel, you want to read?
Yeah. Now the Lord had said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do, since Abraham has become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him? For I have singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, in order that the Lord may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. The men went.
Okay, that's so. Why is he telling Abraham? Why is he confiding in Abraham? He doesn't mention here Lot, right?
Kind of to give them the chance to like
Who's Abraham here? What's the role of Abraham?
to like act like God in a way and to do, or I don't know if that makes sense, like to decide what's right, basically, like to
The role of the Jewish people that starts by Abraham is to be the moral leader of the world, right? That he may instruct his children and his posterity doing what is just and right. That's the focus, the center of the role of the Jewish people in the world, right? He is my representative in the world to create justice. That's the role of the Jewish people. And because of that, God has to confide in him, because he is, if you want, the delegate or the representative of human justice. Now that's crazy. He invites Abraham's starting to conduct this. You know what happens now after he tells him? What does Abraham say when he tells him he's going to destroy Sodom? You don't remember?
he tries to stop them.
But how does he try?
Oh yeah, by finding.
Right? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now think about it. If we go back to Dresden, okay, to Nazi Germany, Sodom is described as worse than Nazi Germany, as the most vicious place in the world. We see this later on in the story, that even if they have 2 guests, the whole city comes up against them and wants to rape them. I mean, it's really a very vicious. I mean, they didn't have concentration camps. They didn't have the technological ability to destroy people. But this is even worse. I mean, they wanted to be savage to them by raping them. So this is the worst place in the world. But Abraham is trying to stop God. Why? What is God going to do?
He's going to kill
What's the plan?
innocent people.
What?
He's gonna like wipe out all of Sodom, but in doing so, he's gonna kill innocent people.
He's going to, I mean, it's literally what we did in Gaza. He's going to destroy the city from the air, right? Even the description of the fire and the stone that's going to go on Sodom. And Abraham says, you can't do it because there might be there 50. Now 50 is nothing in a big city, right? And he starts to bargain with God. You know where he stops? God says, okay, I won't destroy them for 50. So he says, okay, what about 40? And then God says, okay, I won't destruct them. Now this whole procedure, I mean, it's funny, right? Doesn't God know the amount of people he's going to destroy? Does he need Abraham to tell him that? What is God doing? What is God and Abraham doing here?
Well, if the purpose is moral education, maybe that's something.
Training.
Training, yeah.
It's an exercise in justice, right? You're asking somebody who's not a side to it. It's dumb, and Abraham hates them certainly, because Abraham's most important trait is hospitality. So we know that the opposite of Abraham is dumb, but he's being trained not to stand by. Right? He's the United Nations of the time. And he's trying to convince God not to destroy the whole city because of innocent lives. Now it's again, I mean, you can look at it from a religious point of view or an ironic point of view. Who is the most important nation that has to deal today with the problem of innocent civilians all over the world? Is it a chance that after 2,000 years of exile, we are brought to the same place, to the same dilemma that Abraham started with before? And not only that God is doing it, we have to decide what to do.
And that was the point of the training, so that we would know
Exactly.
when it came around to it.
Exactly. Okay, you can understand why I see it from a religious point of view. God brought us to this situation, right? He chose the place for us, which is the worst place in the world to be, right? In the middle of the straw. Do you know, is this a saying in English too, when you have a bone stuck in your throat? It's a Hebrew pun that you say, I got a bone stuck in the middle of my throat. Did you ever happen to have this type of thing, right? Where a bone stuck in the middle of their throat. So he brought us here and created the situation that we have to be the leaders of the world in dealing with civilian casualties. So what do? We create the Iron Dome so we can protect, the fear of killing or being killed. So the Iron Dome helps us prevent being killed, but it's still, people don't understand what it means to have the siren go on. My granddaughter in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was attacked once during the whole time. She's 13 years old. She became hysterical because suddenly there was this siren and they had to rush to a place, and she still hasn't really come out of it. Now, she's not post-traumatic. She's not like the people in the South that have had it on and on and on. So it's not, now, I'm not comparing it to a Gaza child who is in much worse situation. It's not comparable, but it's still, being this is the genius of creating the Iron Dome, so that we can feel a basic security, even though there were children killed in Israel too, from the rockets. So on one hand, we create the Iron Dome to allow us not to be as vicious. If there wasn't the Iron Dome, you have to understand what would have happened. If there wasn't the Iron Dome and more Israelis were killed, we would have had no other alternative than to conquer Gaza. We couldn't accept this level of, we're talking about more than 1,000 rockets. If these rockets would have hit, Israel would have had to go into Gaza and demolish it. So creating this unique protective dome allowed us to be less vicious. And
So
on the other hand,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because from the perspective of the world, and a lot of the news I've seen, the dome makes the moral culpability of Israel worse. Not that I agree with this, but from this perspective, the dome prevents further moral culpability on the part of Israel, because otherwise they would have no. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
If more than, in this whole situation, 10 people were killed in Israel. But if there wasn't the Iron Dome, it would have been hundreds, if not thousands. And we couldn't accept it. We would have had to go in and destroy all the abilities for them to keep shooting. They kept shooting until the last day. The only way to stop the shooting would have been physically to go there. And that would have meant a massacre on their side, and also a big sacrifice on our side in terms of soldiers, not just civilians. So that's one thing. The other thing is our development of extraordinary intelligence. Intelligence? Is that how you say it in English? To know exactly where the metro, what we called, where the underground city of Hamas is, in order to directly destroy it and not destroy civilians. Now, of course, we couldn't be 100%. I mean, it's still bombs falling from the sky. So you couldn't be 100%. But I mean, if you look at any other wars, for example, as America fought in Iraq or Afghanistan, or the European attacks on Sarajevo and during the Yugoslav wars, the amount of civilian casualties is not comparable. I mean, you can read it. We're talking about hundreds of percentage, if not thousands of percentage more, because we had to I'm not sure it's only because we are more moral, but also because of our specific, we're not a power. I mean, when Russia, think about what Russia did in Syria to civilians. I mean, the whole war in Russia by the Russian regime and the Syrian government was waged against. They destroyed cities. They were attacking civilians on purpose. Now we created this, again, you have to be a crazy Jew to do the procedure that we did. You know what I mean? The knock on the the knock on the roof procedure. You don't know what? Before Israel would destroy a building, it would throw a small bomb on the roof of the building. They called it knock on the roof. That was the name of in order that people know that we're about to destroy the building, so that they have time to go out. And the Israeli intelligence sent WhatsApp messages to the people living there. I mean, you have to understand what level of intelligence you have to have, that you have the WhatsApp numbers of the people living within the building. If Israel would not have done that, there would have been hundreds of casualties, because it destroyed especially the towers, but not only towers. I mean, before destroying any building, they knocked on the roof, as they called it.
And from what I gather, there were some unwarned casualties from the tunnels that caused buildings to collapse above ground. But you're saying anything else where they destroyed it from above ground, they knocked.
Yeah. Now again, it's not sterile. When you throw such a big amount of explosives, you can't be sterile.
Mm-hmm.
But percentage-wise, I told you the children percentage is high, because the minute you miss, the chances of you hitting children is 10 times bigger than the chance of you hitting and it's terrible. But you know, now I'm not saying that the Israeli commanders learned the story of Sodom, right? It's not that they read the Bible and said, okay, now we have to do this crazy knock on the roof type procedure. but it's clearly the Jewish conscience that was started off by Abraham that leads us. You didn't hear about knock on the roof? You did, Kyla. And Gabriel? It's interesting. I mean, the media didn't cover it. So, Kyla, how did you know about it?
My family loves talking about it because because Israel's so, like the IDF is so moral and they warn everybody. And, like,
I mean, you can't be moral in the personal level in a war. It's impossible. I mean, in war, innocent people get killed, even if they're only soldiers. Right? When you attack a barracks of a so you, I mean, there's nothing. I don't think we can call it moral, but we are now in terms of, again, that's what I'm saying. I mean, God brought us to this place, to the center of the conflict. I mean, look, what's the biggest conflict today in the world? Between who and who? Worldly.
Or the most publicized, I guess.
What? No, that's, yeah, but I'm talking about globally. What's the biggest global war today?
Oh.
Islam versus the West, right?
Yeah.
What's happening in Israel? Israel versus the West, right? We have a micro situation of the big picture. This is why it's so crazy, like you said, that we are the most publicized. I mean, we are a fraction of the whole world, but we're still at the center of the focus because what we are having here is exactly the gist of the biggest conflict in the world. And therefore, for me, it's like God talking to us again after Abraham and telling us, you have the responsibility to find the solution. I'm talking about now the peaceful solution. This is why, for me, if this government is going to be formed, you know that the Arab party that is going to join the government is not just Arab. Do you know what its DNA?
Islamic.
The different parties. There's the Communist Party, there's the Nationalist Party, Arab. There are 5 Arab parties. What's the identity of the party that is planned to be joined in Israel? You know?
Islamic.
Islamic. It's so paradoxical that mostly the government is going to be mostly leftist liberal, but they made a special, it's ironic and sad, they made a special agreement with them that they are not going to promote LGBT rights because they're Muslim. It's you know, it's a, but what's important, the LGBT right is ironic, but what's important is that the connection between Jews and Arabs, which is going to be formed for the first time in Israel, is going to be with the Islamic Party. And I think I told you about my friend, Rabbi Fruman. His dialogue in Israel was mostly with the Islamic people, the people who formed the Islamic Party. I mean, I personally met with the leader, with the sheikh, the religious leader of that party, because of my friend. And they had a dialogue about having peace from a religious point of view. Why religion can be a bridge and not the cause of violence. And it's happening. I mean, if it happens. This is why I prophesized that this is what's going to happen, not because I'm a prophet, but because it was more wishful thinking, or I was praying for it to happen.
It's also ironic that if it had been Yair Lapid, if it had been Lapid with at the seat as PM in a coalition with with the Islamic Party, it would have been a different thing. But here you have the first Orthodox PM in a coalition with an Islamist party. I mean, that's crazy.
Right. Right. Exactly. My friend always said that the secular part of the Jewish people and the secular part of the Arab people will never be able to make peace. And the only way to make peace is between the religious people. I think I told you about this last time, about the story when he went to meet with the Hamas leader in Gaza and prayed with them. It was because of this idea. And it's happening in front of our eyes, if it happens. It's not over till the fat lady sings, as you say. But in this case, it's not a fat lady, it's a 40-year-old man who can stop it. But it's unbelievable how, I mean, it's hanging by the thread, because they have 61 out of 120, so it's 51%. And if he falls off, then the whole thing falls off, because you can't have a government with 60 members. You need at least 61. So it's also ironic. I mean, how do these numbers get so specific? Anyway, if you are not a believer, I think you have a lot to explain to yourself. I'm not trying to convince you to become a believer, but the irony of history, whatever you want to call it, but it is something that you can recognize as, even without God, as the basic deep DNA of the Jewish people that is being tested now.
I need to be somewhere in 20 minutes, so I need to run.
No, basically, I've finished what I have to say.
I don't want to cut the conversation short, but thank you. This is really, the stone parallel was very interesting. I'm going to think about it some more. Okay, I'll see you guys.
Bye.
I had a question about, and this is in the realm of the practical, so it's harder to know, but I had a question about Bennett, which is, if the religious side of Arabs and Jews is the tool for peace, which intuitively I believe, but with Bennett advocating a one state, he wants to annex the West Bank, or at least he did. I've also heard things that's also what people in the West Bank want. So maybe that is the path. But I guess, yeah, my question is, what is, even if it's not concrete, what is the future of peace look like with religious parties leading the way? Yeah.
We talked about it, I think, a lot, Gabriel. If you want the vision of my friend, it is a one-state solution. But in a peaceful way, not in a. I mean, the danger of one-state solution is apartheid, because if Jews will still want to dominate the Arabs, then we're talking about 50-50 or around 50. So that's the danger, that's the fear. The alternative, but this has to be a very radical change within the Jewish and the Arab population, is that we will have a peaceful one-state solution, which means Zionism and Palestinian hope for a political entity will be able to be implemented within the one-state solution. Now, right now, it sounds crazy. The animosity is so big that it's unbelievable. So it's a messianic message. And if it happens, then really we can show the world how is the West and Islam can work together for the benefit of the general people. But the reason I'm not a leftist, I'm not a rightist, but I'm not a leftist, is because the idea of the two-state solution, in the long run, at least, is impossible. I mean, if you think about what let's say the optimal Palestinians will get is this narrow state with no access to the sea, or with a strange highway between the West Bank and Gaza. I mean, if the it's not sustainable, and economically, you're going to have a third world. We have a third world population, the lowest of the, especially Gaza. West Bank is better, with one of the most richest countries in the world. Now the tension, the social tension between these two states is, again, it's not reasonable. So in the long run, there is no other solution than in somehow having, like Canada, that you have the French and the English in some way living together. Now, right now, it sounds crazy because Islam is not the French and Israel is not the English. And I mean, there's the level of animosity, the level of hatred, and it's more like Ireland, maybe in this level, but it's even worse than Ireland. So at the end, that's the only solution. But it's not a solution now. We have to, this is why I'm so happy about this government, because it's going to start this process of living together on a civilian level. So it could be now think about what's been happening in Israel in the last month. how do you call it in Disney? The train that
Roller
goes
coaster?
up and down,
A roller coaster?
the roller coaster. I mean, we've gone in 1 month. We've gone from total optimism to total pessimism within a week. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, even for Israel, this month was hyperactive and a level that we didn't know. I mean, last week, my son-in-law and my grandson, who live in Lod, were talking about total separation from the Arab population. A much worse situation than before because of the riots that came out, especially in Lod. And they were attacked physically. I mean, their car wasn't burned, but their neighbors' cars was burned. I mean, it was really terrible. And if this is going to happen, and I still have to say if, then it's almost on the radical opposite of this situation. So we'll see.
It's a hopeful.
It's like a very good TV series. Have to hang on and see what's the next episode. I mean, it's I wish we could have binged it, but
yeah, get it over with a little sooner. Yeah.
right, get to the end, whatever the end is, but get there. The drama is. I mean, literally, I check the news every hour because I don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully, my friend in heaven is having hopefully an influence. I hope.
I think I have to go to dinner, but thank you so much.
Okay, so Jonah, if you want, I can send you directly the invitations. Just send me through Kyla your number, and I'll add you to the.
Okay, I will. That'd be great. Thanks so much. Yeah. All right. I would
Gabriel,
say good night, but I realize it's morning in Israel, so
yeah.
good morning.
Gabriel, about the film course.
Yeah.
If you want to tell the guy who's leading it, if he wants to invite me to talk, because about 50% of what is there, I have to do with in different ways.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I'll definitely ask him. It would probably have to be like a supplemental class. We have like 3 more classes left, but that's definitely a good idea. It's been really interesting so far.
You watched the whole films?
We watched, so we have a series of assigned films based on a bunch of different topics. So some of them are like the army, religious life, the Israeli other, Mizrahi, like Eureka films, Holocaust related.
But I saw a list of films.
Yeah.
Did you see the film? I mean, for example, Filling the Void.
Yeah, we just watched that one.
So this is a student of mine who made it. Rama Burstein, she's the filmmaker. She's a Haredi filmmaker.
Yeah, we spoke about her. It was super interesting. And we also we spoke about the film in terms of like her choice of camera and just like general filmmaking.